Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that's right, my friends. You've tuned in here to America's home for conservative, not bitter talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to tell you right off the top, I'm not my normal self here this morning. I'll do my best here to get through just some stuff here I'm not going to waste your time with, but just bear with me today, my friends. I want to talk today about this fight in Texas over gerrymandering. We've got a bunch of drama that has now been, engaged in by the Dramocrats as usual. You've got reports that Governor Abbott... I got a bunch of stuff here in the stack of stuff, but Governor Abbott orders the arrest of Texas House Democrats who have fled the state. Now, they fled the state to go, of all places, to the People's Republic of Illinois, where they took refuge to avoid having to go and, to vote on these new districts that are going to be more likely Republican districts now than Democrat districts, and they're upset about this. There's been a bunch of I'll go through it, but that's what I want to talk about here today, my friends. Before we get started, though, let me remind you that Solti is here to help you if you're concerned about your heart's health, if you're concerned about your cholesterol. Solti, my friends, has been documented, scientifically proven, clinically proven to lower cholesterol. May be able to do the same thing for you. It's very affordable. It's a great place to start when it comes to taking care of your heart's health. All you have to do is go to Soltea.com, Soltea. I take the supplement. You can too. And if you use promo code TODD, you're going to save 50% off your first order, and you're going to get free shipping to boot. Soltea.com, Soltea, promo code Todd. All right, so let's go through really quickly what's happened here. We're going to talk a little bit about gerrymandering. We're going to talk about the potential here for the Supreme Court to make a ruling on the Voting Rights Act, which would potentially change at least part of the way that these districts have to be in accordance with federal law, drawn and so forth. But let's go back here. Let's kind of set the framework on really what's happening. So every 10 years, we have a census here in this country. It's a count. Now, I've gone through the census. I've talked with you about some of the problems in the census. We currently count everybody that we possibly can, and whether they're here legally or not. We don't ask the citizenship question. And if you would have followed this stuff for long, you would know that Biden had issued an executive order basically saying, hey, we're going to count every person, and that's going to be used for apportionment and for the assignment, the allocation of federal tax dollars. So you count every person who's here, which, of course, we want to count every person who's here legally for these counts, because that determines, most importantly, I don't like how the federal tax dollars are tied to this. I think the entire system is upside down. It doesn't make any sense. But two things happen when you have these counts. Two main things. One is once you determine a state's population, you then can determine how many representatives, how many of the 435 congressional seats are apportioned or assigned to your particular state. And so from time to time, these things, you might gain a couple districts, lose a district, whatever, and these things have to be based upon the population redrawn. There's also times when the state legislature can simply redraw the districts. Now, a couple things to keep in mind here. Number one, these districts are supposed to have, and it makes sense, these districts are supposed to have roughly the same number of people, so that each member of Congress is elected to represent roughly the same number of people. And so even without an overall population change, you can have populations shift. You can have certain cities that decrease in population without a net gain to your overall population. The districts might need to be changed, or just politically, the people in charge, that this happens at the state legislature level, they can make the decision that this is constitutional, by the way. They have control over how elections are won. So if you go to the Constitution, and I'm just going to touch on this, it's Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1. And this is the clause of the Constitution. It's vague, but it has been deemed to encompass the idea of drawing legislative congressional districts. Here's what it says. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may, this is talking about the federal Congress, U.S. Congress, may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. So it's up to ultimately the state legislature to draw these districts. Now, Texas, we've not had reapportionment yet. I just was wanted to mention that because that's one of the big, one of the big parts of when districts are drawn. But this is, it doesn't necessarily always have to happen every, around, say, 2030 when we have new numbers of population and so forth. These districts can be redrawn. I believe it has to be kind of right now in this time frame. I was looking a little bit into this, getting into the weeds a bit. So Texas has decided to redraw these districts. And when they did that, of course, they have a Republican legislature. They've decided, obviously, they want to put things in the favor of Republicans. And so they've redrawn these districts to where they think, and of course, who knows, right? Because you have to have an election, but just demographically, statistically, how they've drawn these districts, what we know about voting patterns and that sort of stuff, it appears that these districts are going to be, 5 of the ones that are currently Democrat districts are going to be more than likely Republican districts. This, of course, has people upset. This has the governor of California threatening to do the same thing in California to try to eradicate or erase Republican seats from the state of California. And it's turned into a big thing, right? It's turned into Republicans cheat, Democrats don't. What's interesting, this is interesting on a lot of levels. First, I think about this in terms of the idea of drawing these districts. First and foremost, this needs to be at the state legislature level, or the responsibility of the state legislature, because this is a political act. This is not something, I wonder what people think is the right shape to draw. I mean, is it a rectangle? Is it a square? Does it ever make sense to connect cities that are along a highway and have the more rural population that's removed from a highway in another district? How many times do you want to split a city? There's a lot of factors here, a whole lot of factors. And the truth be told, there's no way that everybody's going to agree on how any district should be drawn. Now, there's clearly examples of districts. We've all seen this. It's called gerrymandering, where state legislatures have gone out of their way to try to connect, whatever. Democrats try to connect Democrat areas. Republicans try to connect Republican areas. And they try to split it up so that, for example, Republicans might say, let's split these urban areas up and then have them encompass as much, conservative areas to dilute the urban vote. Or Democrats might say, how do we carve off enough of the urban area, the Democrat vote, to then include a certain amount of the rural or the suburban area that's typically Republican, that we can then dilute with the votes from the city and Democrat votes. And both parties have done this. The problem is, we can look at a map and say, wow, that's really a stretch of the imagination, right? But then at the same time, if we were asked to say, well, what's the best way to do it? There's not a way. There's not a way to do this because they're not going to be uniform because the population of the United States isn't uniform. I mean, you may have noticed if you drive across this country, you'll hit urban areas and then you'll hit suburban areas, you'll hit rural areas, and it's not uniform. And so these shapes are going to be different sizes. They're going to have to be different shapes because people live where they're going to live. And if each district has to have the same roughly number of people in it, then you can see that there's going to be odd shapes. But when you can see that districts are very carefully crafted and they're super long and super skinny and they're connecting cities and trying to split cities up ever so just precisely, that there's a political motivation there. And listen, that's just the way that it's going to be. That's why these things can be best dealt with by the state legislature, because if the people are not happy with this, they can hold their legislature responsible. Now, some states have supposedly third-party groups come in, commissions come in that tell you what the fair shape is. I don't know how you determine that, but that's what some states do. You could say, to try to pass the buck. You could say maybe if you believe that they're trying to be fair and as much apolitical as possible. But again, the people on the committee are going to, these are people, these people vote. So I don't know there's not a fair way. There's not just a simple, straightforward way to do this that everybody's going to agree with. I've seen a bunch of ideas bantered about out there, but at the end of the day, if each person has to represent a district that has roughly the same number of people, then you're going to have to draw these districts that are not going to look like anything. And why is one shape superior at some level over another, where at the same time we can acknowledge that that's probably true, while at the same time acknowledging when someone goes really, really out of the way to carve these up to be as advantageous to their political party as possible. So this happens in a lot of states: Illinois, California, Texas. It happens. It's common. It's common for the way that this happens. Now, to further complicate this, you will have remembered that I read Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1. At the end of that clause, it says that Congress may, this is talking about the U.S. Congress, may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. So Congress has the power to override or to regulate the process if it so chooses. So they've done this in the past. They've done this when they passed the Voting Rights Act of 1964. Now, this is interesting to me because my son and I went down, you may remember I mentioned that we took a day trip to Austin, Texas, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. Had a great time with him. Couple of things. Number one, we went to the State House. It's the biggest state house, I believe, in the country. Biggest Capitol building minus outside of Washington, D.C., the national capital, the federal capital. So we were there. We went into the Senate. We went into the House there in Austin for the state of Texas. We saw we saw the chamber. We saw the list of representatives that were listed. I think there was something up on the wall there, the history and all that stuff. So we saw that. We also that day went to the LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson Presidential Library. He was president when the Voting Rights Act was passed. So that was in 1965. Now, so I want to read to you just a quick little summary. Voting Rights Act is a landmark federal law designed to prevent racial discrimination in voting. Passed during the Civil Rights era, this was all part of the New Society by LBJ. Its original focus was to address practices, especially in southern states, that kept Black African Americans, Black Americans from voting, such as literacy tests and poll taxes. So specifically, Section 2 prohibits any voting practice or districting plan, note that, so think about the drawing of the districts, that result in discrimination against racial or language minorities. So the courts, this says, use this section to strike down district maps that dilute minority voting power. So this gets more complicated. So if your district is drawn in such a way that it appears that you're trying to fracture minority groups, racial minority groups, or as this says, language minorities, from being able to have a representative to represent them, which again, it's tough to talk about race in this country because it's such an emotional topic. But this idea to me that someone who is of a particular race automatically has a candidate that's best for them is crazy to my way of thinking. I don't understand this. I do in the sense of politics and building coalitions and trying to use identity politics to get yourself elected and reelected and all that. But so you can split your district up pretty much as you see fit if you're the legislature, but you have this Voting Rights Act that says you can't do it amongst racial lines, which, if you're going to split a city up, let's just say, for example, there's a higher percentage of Black Americans who live in urban areas. You start splitting a city up, and then there's a built-in clause. Those cities, by the way, are also typically Democrats. So there's almost a built-in protection that would say, based upon this law, at least this is an argument, that would say they're not allowed to draw something that's a political exercise, a congressional district, if it involves race here. So this is, again, it gets complicated. It gets complicated. It's even more. I want to mention this. I wanted to make sure I did this today. LBJ, I told my son this. I really enjoyed going with him to the presidential library. It was neat. But I got to say, LBJ may quite literally be, one of my least favorite presidents. He actually said this, and I'm going to have to edit it because there's certain things I don't want to say when talking about Black Americans. He said they're getting pretty uppity these days. This is something that's widely considered to be accurate, though it's not an official statement, but it's something that he said privately. And this is generally believed to be something that he said or something very close to this. So when talking about Black Americans, he said they're getting pretty uppity these days. Now we've got to do something about this. We've got to give them a little something, not enough to make a difference, I'll have them, and he used a very inappropriate word here, voting Democratic for the next 200 years. So by giving them something, what came of this was the Voting Rights Act. So, and other legislation too, this concept of giving political, say, favors or just things that he thought would appeal to certain racial groups. He did it, at least according to what he said here. I don't know how else to determine this, but he'll have, again, very inappropriate word when referencing black Americans. He said, I'll have them voting Democratic for the next 200 years. So that's kind of the background of this too. So now you've got this Voting Rights Act. You've got the Supreme Court who's now potentially going to be involved, which I'll get to here in a moment. The left's in a basic panic here because if the Supreme Court rules that districts don't have to, or state legislatures don't have to follow the second clause of the Voting Rights Act, or Part 2, whatever that's called, the second part that I just referenced, about not being able to fragment racial communities based upon the districting, then this could have enormous impact on what the district's outcome is, meaning there could be a lot more blue districts that could be drawn to be red districts, especially if a Republican legislature, state legislature is in power in a state and they can begin to fragment these. I'll get into this in a little bit more detail here in just a moment. It's going to be the next segment because I'm about out of time here, but I just wanted to paint this picture here. So, but before I do that, I've got to take a little break here, my friends. Before I do that, though, let's be honest. When your financial world starts getting a little more complicated, you need more than one size-fits-all approach. That's where Full Suite Wealth shines. Their team specializes in working with families and individuals at your level, offering personalized guidance that goes far beyond the basics, from private equity and private credit to option strategies and coordinated legal planning. Full Suite Wealth helps you see the big picture and make confident decisions about your legacy. It's all about having a dedicated team that's there to help guide you every step of the way so that you can focus on what matters most to you, your family, your goals, your future. Want real confidence in your financial life? Visit FullSuiteWealth.com. That's FullSuiteWealth.com. Build your legacy. Secure your future. All right, so I've got to take a time out here. When we get back, I want to kind of bring in a little bit of what's happening with the Supreme Court, what could be happening, what many people believe is about to happen. I want to talk about the specifics of what is happening at the state level with the Democrats fleeing the state of Texas to go to Illinois, Abbott ordering the arrest of people who have done so. Jasmine Crockett has apparently joined them. It's wild times here. So, timeout's in order, my friends. Sit tight. You're listening here to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Back in just a minute.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, my friends. So, I want to continue this conversation here. We're talking about the Voting Rights Act. We're talking about redistricting. We're talking about gerrymandering. We're talking about, really, what started all this is what's happening in Texas. So, in addition to all this stuff happening in Texas, the Supreme Court has given, it appears, it's signaled it. I saw somewhere it announced it, but I don't know if it's just signaled or if it appears that this is going to be the case where this ends up. But the U.S. Supreme Court has indicated it may take up Louisiana versus Calais a case challenging the use of race-based redistricting in congressional maps. This is at lifezet.com. It will be in the stack of stuff at toddhuffshow.com if you want to read it. The outcome could carry major nationwide implications, including the possibility of redrawing dozens of House districts and shifting the political landscape ahead of the 2026 midterm election. So that's something else. This could all be happening here prior to the midterm elections, which are a little over, just a little over a year away. Very important elections, by the way. On Friday, the court invited the U.S. Solicitor General to weigh in on the case, a move that legal experts say often signals serious interest in granting review. At the center of the case is whether Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which we've been talking about, permits the race-conscious creation of congressional districts, a practice commonly used to ensure that racial minority populations can elect candidates of their choice. It continues here. The case originated in Louisiana, where plaintiffs challenged the state's current congressional map, arguing that it improperly emphasizes race when drawing boundaries. Remember, states can draw their districts. They have to comply with what Congress has said. That Congress can regulate that, have some oversight. And so they passed the the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And so in doing so, there was a Section 2 in there that is designed to prevent racial groups from being broken up into, other districts so that their vote, again, I don't like talking like this. I don't like thinking like this. But the idea is, hey, these are minority groups. They should be able to have a voice in Congress. Of course, they should be able to have a voice. They should be able to vote for who they want to vote for. The question becomes, should they be able to basically not have their area of the city broken up so that there's a majority-minority group in that city? So here's what's technically under review. The court is examining Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which prohibits voting practices or district maps that dilute the voting power of racial or language minority groups. Specifically, the court is reviewing how Section 2 has been used to support the creation of majority-minority districts intentionally drawn so that a minority group makes up at least 50% of the voters. So the idea would be, I guess this is the argument. Hey, this is a minority group. They should be able to have a political voice, actually a representative that represents a majority, where they would make up the majority of the district. Some people will say that that's a great thing. Other people would say, well, why is that how we're thinking about doing this? And for those who say that, the opposition would say you're trying to silence or basically to not allow that group of people to have a political voice, which of course very few people, the lunatics want to do that. But the question is basically, I guess you could say, predicated on whether or not you believe that racial identity politics is the way that Americans vote. Because you still get a vote, no matter if you're, with voting with a majority of people that's in your racial group and category or not. You still get to vote. But the argument goes, you can't, given America's history on race, the thinking was, let's not allow these minority voices still to be, to still not have the full political weight that they could or should have. That's the thinking. I'm not defending it. But the question is, why does the U.S. Congress get to tell folks that has to be a requirement? And that's really what's at hand here. That's really specifically what they're trying to decide. And so if this is stricken or struck down, if this is viewed as unconstitutional, if it's viewed by the high court that, you can't prevent people from anything because of their race, as well you shouldn't. if the court also concludes that you shouldn't make sure that they get special political privileges either, then that would call this into question, because it's, again, in this law, and it is something that at least has been questioned here. Why is this something that the U.S. Congress should be able to dictate to the states? And again, I can hear I'm just raising the questions. I'm just explaining how this is going to be looked at, as I understand it. So that's where we are. So the justices have requested an additional briefing and scheduled re-argument in the fall, suggesting that they may significantly limit or reinterpret Section 2 as applied to race-based districting. So there's other cases that have concerned this. I don't want to get into that at the moment. Simply, it's just not I don't have the time, and it's just really not the format to get too much into this right now, especially when there's other more, well, I don't want to say more pressing, but other parts of this story that I want to make sure that I get to. So now shift back to Texas. Texas, you've got this redistricting, this new map that looks like it's going to potentially flip 5 current Democrat seats to Republican seats. Democrats in the State House have gotten very upset at this. There's really not a whole lot they can do to stop it. They can, however, prevent there from being basically a vote, so they fled the state. They went to Illinois. This happened here in my state. I've forgotten about this, but Dramocrats being Dramocrats, several years ago in Indiana, politicians fled to Illinois. I'd have to look or think about that. I don't remember what it was that they fled for, the reasoning, the rationale. I mean, ultimately, it's the same sort of thing. It was to prevent business from being done, and that's not legal. You basically can't hold Congress hostage. That's not democracy. I mean, again, these are elected officials. The only reason that things are not allowed to get done is because people are basically preventing Congress from operating as it should, at least the state legislature in Texas. So they fled to Illinois. I've read somewhere that Jasmine Crockett, who's a U.S. representative from Houston, I believe, you know who Jasmine Crockett is. I mean, just a lunatic leftist. An actually obscene, unlikable lunatic leftist. But she's one that some on the left want to be one of the front runners, one of the spokespeople, maybe one of the candidates for who knows, for president of the United States. Nothing would surprise me at this point from the left. But so she's with them too. So you got this big fight. And then you've got Governor Abbott here, the Texas governor. Abbott orders the arrest of AWOL Texas House Democrats after warrant issued by the House Speaker. They're not messing around in the state of Texas. So that's happening too. And I want to get into this because this is, again, we are in, there's not been political tension and turmoil like this in the lives of many American voters. I think there has been tension and problems. It's just been going on behind the scenes, and the average American didn't know it. But the bottom line here is that this is at a fevered pitch, and now you have the warrants being issued by the Speaker of the House in Texas for Democrats who refuse to participate in the government to prevent this sort of thing from happening. So, more to say about this, but I'm going to have to take a time out here in just a minute, my friends. So think about this. Our investments are like seeds that we plant. They grow, they multiply, but are they bearing the kind of fruit that you want? At 4-8 Financial, they believe your money should reflect your values. They specialize in wealth management and biblically responsible investing, screening out companies that do not align with your faith. It's all part of their purpose-centered financial planning, which helps you live a life of meaning and purpose. Now, you can take an assessment, a quiz, to see if your current investments align with your values or if you're funding things that do not correspond with your faith and values. All you got to do is go to 48financial.com/Todd, 48financial.com/Todd. 48Financial, they're here to worry about your money so that you don't have to. My friends, I've got to take a timeout, quick timeout here. Be back in just a minute.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you want to get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, my friends. Third and final segment of the program today. Reminder that My Pillow, they had another order canceled by one of the big retail stores. That means they're passing their savings along to you. You're going to get wholesale pricing on their classic collection. That includes their standard My Pillow, king size, queen size My Pillows, the body pillows, multi-use My Pillows. All you have to do is go to mypillow.com. You can use promo code Todd. You'll get that discount. You'll also get discounts on other products there as well. mypillow.com, promo code Todd. So before the break, I alluded to this story as well, which dovetails with what we've been talking about here. Talking about Governor Abbott from Texas, orders arrest of AWOL Texas House Democrats after warrant issued by the House Speaker. Texas Governor Greg Abbott had earlier said state Democrats taking steps to stall Republican redistricting efforts could be liable for, quote, felonies. So here we go. This just happened. This was posted yesterday afternoon, while the 4 p.m. Central Time deadline having come and gone. Texas Speaker of the House Dustin Burrows announced this afternoon he would sign arrest warrants against any absent Democrat lawmakers if authorized by a vote of the chamber. Shortly thereafter, the House did approve the warrants, and Governor Abbott then swiftly called on the Texas Department of Public Safety to arrest the delinquent Texas House Democrats. The Democratic lawmakers, this is FoxNews.com, which again is going to be on the Stack of Stuff page at ToddHuffShow.com. Let's see. The Democratic lawmakers ultimately did not return to Texas in time on Monday to approve a quorum amid a fight to halt GOP efforts to redraw the state's congressional maps. The Illinois State Democratic Party put out a press release shortly before the quorum in Texas was requested, indicating that, quote, in a bold and unified response, Texas House Democrats have denied a quorum. While several state Democrats appeared at an event in Illinois on Monday, a state that critics argue is heavily gerrymandered itself, other events aimed at fighting Texas's redistricting efforts were also held in Albany, Boston, and Chicago, according to the press release. Let me begin by commending the members who did show up, Texas Speaker of the House Dustin Burrows said after the quorum was rejected. Meanwhile, Burrows slammed the absent Democrats and said he would not hesitate to sign civil arrest warrants if it is determined the lawmakers are in violation of the law. Pursuant to the rules of the House, I am prepared to recognize a motion to place a call on the House and any other motions necessary to compel the return of absent members, Burrows said Monday afternoon. Should a motion prevail, I will immediately sign the warrants for the civil arrest of the members who have said they will not be here. He continued, as Speaker, I will do everything in my power to establish quorum and move this body forward by any and all means available to this office. Earlier Monday, Governor Abbott threatened to expel and potentially prosecute Democratic lawmakers who have fled Texas to stop Republicans from moving ahead with efforts to redraw the state's congressional districts. GOP Texas State Senate also filed, sorry, it was weird. They've got Senate abbreviated. Usually that's senator. Anyway, also filed Senate Bill 62 on Monday in an effort to fire the absent lawmakers for not showing up. So, couple of things. Number one, this is clearly not democracy, right? You can't, if Trump was doing this would be called and viewed as an effort to overthrow our democracy and all that sort of stuff. You know the way that the game is played. So again, it's interesting to me that Democrats, again, just objectively can seemingly do whatever they want and face no repercussions, at least as far as the media is concerned. They'll defend any actions that they take as, again, as a necessary step, I guess, in protecting our democracy and so forth. So that's what's happening in Texas. And this is, listen, I know this is, for people who don't, there's different types of people. And I think for some people, it's just a little much. People long for the days, definitely prior to Trump, when these political things just didn't control our lives. It's uncomfortable for people. You got the governor talking about the governor of Texas, basically saying he might prosecute some of these people. People think, my goodness, I don't want politics to become like this, but it is. Listen, the reality is we've had people that have been doing things that are highly objectionable, possibly, definitely against the rules and the Constitution and all that for a long time, maybe breaking the law in some cases, and they've been allowed to do this unchecked for a long, long time. So the idea that they're not going to press the envelope here and continue to try to do things, even if they are subverting our democracy, even though we act like it only can go one way, the media does anyway, the only ones who can do that are Republicans. But there's going to be hardball played. And Trump has kind of set the tone here. And there's, a difference about going after your political adversaries versus turning a blind eye when they do things that are potentially, or maybe in some cases, clearly against the law. I got to go, though, my friends. Have a great day. SDG.
Bubba Wallace here from 2311 Racing. Funny thing about being fast, you end up waiting a lot. First to show up, first in line, then just waiting. Me, I rev up Chumba Casino. With over 200 social casino games, no slow lanes here. Why sit around when you can spin? I'm already racing. Your turn. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.